Hello, everybody. I'm Amelia.
I'm Tom. Here we are.
Here we are. Yep.
Happy day.
Another beautiful sunny day in Dayton, Ohio, the Gem City. Okay. All right. And we are today going to be engaging the second of four long stories from the Gospel of John that the Revised Common Lectionary has prescribed for the season of Lent during year A. But these stories are really long. So this one, Tom said, kind of naturally divided into two parts. And he's going to tell and we'll talk about just the first part, where Jesus encounters a woman of Samaria by a well. Now, take it away, Tom.
This is the story. He came to a city of Samaria called Sychar, and a place that is near the plot of land that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Jacob's well is there, and Jesus, tired from his journey, sat down. Now, it was about noon. Ooh, hot. A Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." And she said to him, "How is it that you, a man of Judea, ask a drink of me, a woman of Samaria?" Jews share nothing in common with Samaritans. And Jesus said to her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that is asking you for a drink of water, you would ask him, and he would give you living water." And the woman said, "Ha ha, sir, you have no bucket. The well is deep. How are you going to get this living water? Are you greater than our ancestor Jacob, who gave us this well and drank from it with his sons and his flocks?" And Jesus said to her, "Everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks of the water that I will give them will never be thirsty. For the water that I will give them will become in them a spring of water, surging up into eternal life." And the woman said to him, "Sir, give me some of this. Give me some of this water, that I may never be thirsty and not have to keep coming here to draw water." And Jesus said to her, "Go call your husband and come back." And she said, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "You are right when you say you have no husband, for you've had 5 husbands, and the one who is with you now is not your husband. What you have said is true." And she said to him, "Sir, I see that you are a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you say that the place where people must worship is in Jerusalem." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for our salvation is from the Jews. But the hour is coming and is now here when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For such as these, God seeks to worship God. God is spirit, and those who worship God must worship in spirit and in truth. And the woman said, I know that Messiah is coming. And when he comes, he will proclaim all things to us. And Jesus said to her, I am he, the one who is speaking to you.
Just want to let that sink in. Thank you, Tom. Okay, so, oh, there comes the dog, right on cue. Hi, Tippy.
And Tippy said,
Yeah, and Tippy said, right.
right.
Give me some food. Okay, this story starts off with several details about the setting, both place and time. So you want to talk to us about a little bit about Samaria? I always say Sychar. I think you said Sychar. Sychar, is that how you say the city? Yeah. I don't know, the plot of land, the well, and it being noon. What's the significance of any or all of that?
Well, it's an interesting thing that we have no evidence of a place named Sychar. There is a place that is close in name, but it's a mile away. This is very unlikely. The well, that is, which we do know where it's located. Shechem, rather than Sychar, is a more likely text. It's only a minor change. And it's just a short distance from Jacob's well. So we're not quite clear about where this place is. We know where Jacob's well is. And so there is a high probability that this is a story that circulated about Jesus and an incident that took place at Jacob's well.
But it is in Samaria, right?
Yeah, it's in Samaria.
Okay.
Right. I was there. We, on my initial trip, took a kind of a detour, but up into Samaria and stopped at Jacob's well. So I have a clear memory of it. Wasn't anything particularly remarkable about it, but it's clearly been a place of great significance over the centuries.
And it was about noon. So I think you actually said hot. I mean, is that the only?
Real subtle storytelling thing. Yeah.
Is that the main significance of it, that it would have been hot, or was there anything else about it being noon?
Well, the reason why it was hot, was that it was noon, and so people tended not to come then. So It was very unusual for her to come to the well at noon, and it may imply that she was somewhat ostracized from the other women in the community and came at a time when it was comfortable for her to be there and essentially by herself.
Yeah, and that was another thing I was going to say. It does seem like that just the two of them, because the disciples have gone off to buy food, and there's no mention of anybody else being around. So is that meaningful?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a sign that both of them were, just happened with various kinds of circumstances to be there alone, which was very, very unusual for a Jewish man and a Samaritan woman to talk. That was forbidden. So Jesus is crossing a major boundary in talking to her.
And she, well, I don't know if it's the narrator or the woman who says, Jews don't share things in common with Samaritans.
We have to make a decision about that, and people have different opinions. I think that it's more likely as a story that there was something that she said.
Yeah, I think that's the way you told it. No.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So why don't the Jews share things in common with Samaritans? What's the history there, or the situation at the time?
Yeah. Well, it was a very complex and conflictual relationship. The primary residents of Samaria were those who remained in that area of what we call now Samaria, after the Assyrian conquest of the northern kingdom in 712, maybe it was 721, and they also imported people from Babylonia, so that the temple that was established there was regarded as an unclean place, just as the reason for the prohibition of men, one of the reasons was that Samaritan women were regarded as unclean. So the northern kingdom had been, since the time of David, or the aftermath of Solomon's reign, had been two separate kingdoms, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. And so the people of the north then became Samaria, and they were separated from, and so for now over 700 years, there had been this rift in the country between the people of Judea and the people of what originally was the people of Israel, of the northern kingdom. And that relationship was one of ongoing conflict. Not long before Jesus' day, a group of Samaritans broke into the temple on the night before Passover and spread dead men's bones all over the temple and made it ritually unclean. So Passover had to be canceled that year. So people in Judea were furious at the Samaritans for what they had done. So this was a major attack. But people were regularly attacked if they walked through Samaria, Judeans.
And doesn't beginning the story before the section that you told, it's in the lectionary, doesn't it say Jesus had to go through Samaria or something like that?
I don't.
Well, maybe it's a different story. Anyway, let's move on to this the discussion about the water. Jesus says, "You would have asked me, and I would have given you living water." What does he mean by living water? Is there some reference here that he's making, or is that a new, I don't know, a new metaphor that Jesus is coming up with?
Well, it is a new metaphor. There are, some allusions to moving water or clean water and so on. But this category, this living water, is in its context means water of the Spirit, not unrelated to baptismal water, water that gives life and spirit. And so this Jesus is redirecting the conversation from water in the well to the water of spiritual life.
Right. She doesn't go there quite yet. he's talking in imagery and metaphors and but she's kind of still taking him very literally and says, right, give me some of this so I don't ever have to come back here again.
Right.
And then is it right after that he says, "Go call your husband," and she says, "I don't have a husband." And then he says, "You're right, you've got 5 husbands." I've heard couple of different interpretations of that passage just recently. We were on a Zoom workshop with the Network of Biblical Storytellers, and our little group had quite a discussion about that, and how, maybe it was a reference. Well, you talk about a couple of different options for interpreting that, and then what your take on that section is.
Well, the probable implication of that is that she was promiscuous. A Judean man was permitted to have 3 marriages. To have 5 husbands was to make her and her husband in the annals of Jewish law, to make them unclean. So she is actually making a kind of confession to him. I have no husband.
Okay.
And I don't think that Jesus turns it into an accusation so much as it is simply a statement of fact, that you've had 5 husbands and one you have now is not your husband. So that makes 6. So she is then, on the one hand, a woman who is, by definition, legal definition, unclean, but who is also engaged now in this profound conversation with Jesus.
Okay, so you don't hear his tone as being highly judgmental or something?
No.
Okay, and like I said, some people have interpreted that maybe she's Levirate marriage, or maybe she's been barren or whatever, different things, and he might have a different vetted.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think
all right.
that's pretty unlikely.
Yeah. So, all right. So then there's some discussion about, well, she brings up, where's the right place to worship? You say it's in Jerusalem. We say it's on Mount
Kerosene.
Okay, thank you. And what's the background of these different places to worship?
That's the descendant of the conquest in 721 BC. There was a sacred site, a temple, on Mount Gerizim, but it was closed and was regarded as a place of heresy, of impurity, and so the people of Judea saw it as an alien place, but it had been destroyed in the late century BCE, before the Common Era, and so both temples, both the temple in Jerusalem and the temple on Mount Gerizim, had been destroyed by the time of John. The Jerusalem temple was destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD. And so both of those temples then, after their long history of conflict, had been destroyed. So Jesus is describing a fact that the time is coming and is now when those who worship will worship neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem, but will worship in spirit and in truth.
And then he says God is spirit. Is that a sort of a new understanding of God, or is it highlighting this an understanding it's always been there but not focused on so much? Or
it is an emphasis, I think, that that disassociates the experience of God from the sacrificial cult, either in Jerusalem or on Mount Gerizim, and that God is now not known through the relationship of sacrifice in holy places, but rather is known by spirit, by the discourse that goes on between human beings and God, as a spiritual God who is God not just of Jews, not just of followers of Jesus, who were also Jews, or Samaritans. All had equal access and would worship God in the same place. That is, in the same not place, not in a temple.
Yeah. It seems like in the course of the story, there's a change in relationship between the woman and Jesus that maybe then is reflective of a transformation of relationship between the Jews and the Samaritans. But also, as you're talking, kind of a change in thinking about worship as well, from a more kind of local, physical based understanding to a spiritual based understanding.
What happens in this story is a reconciliation between two persons who are representative of communities that have been in conflict for over 700 years. And so this is a remarkable story of a kind of diplomacy between two alienated people, which is reflected in the beginning of this story. Jews have nothing in common with Samaritans, and is also then a sign that this ancient alienation, this ancient hostility and conflict was being transformed by Jesus' love, by his being willing to participate in this conversation and in this new relationship, which was developed then in the later part of this story, a new relationship between the communities of Israel and the Samaritans.
And you ended this part of the story, and we have to, remind folks that this is really only the first half. But with her saying the Messiah is coming, the one called Christ, and Jesus saying, I am he, the one who you're looking at.
Right.
Is that
it's ego eimi, I am, which is the divine name at the in the Septuagint in Exodus 3. I am Yahweh.
Is that distinctive to John, that Jesus is claiming that identity pretty directly?
It is very direct, and it's implied in a couple other places. So it's a matter of translation, but the plain meaning is I am.
And it's interesting that he's really revealing himself, who he is, to this, foreigner, right? Who's sort of outside the family, his people, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a reconciliation then in the family of the peoples of Israel.
Yeah, that's true. Right. So anything else you want to say for the good of the story and our understanding of it, and maybe in relation to, you've talked about how this reconciliation moves towards reconciliation, but in terms of peace and justice, what the story has to say.
Right. A sign of the kingdom of God is reconciliation of ancient conflicts. And this story is a sign of the impact of what Jesus is doing as a ministry of justice and peace. He creates a degree of reconciliation and peace between peoples who are ancient enemies, and transcends then those divisions and holds open the possibilities of the future in a reconciled relationship. And one of the characteristics of what Jesus' strategy is, he talks to this enemy and listens to her and responds to her, and she likewise responds to him. And so it's a remarkable story of reconciliation between enemies, and of the importance of mutual listening and speaking, telling the truth to each other across these boundaries that develop between people who are in conflict.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Thanks everybody for watching.
Joy.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful story. It's a very joyful story.
Yeah. And read the rest of it. That's important as well.
Right.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.